Perfect. Again, thank you everyone for coming in this evening. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with sharing the application online, as everything is available online, to try to make everything a little bit easier. So let's bring that up. All right, can everybody see the application? It says Artist in Residence application on the screen. Perfect. So the reason this Artist in Residency program started, to give a little bit of a history, is last year, unfortunately, due to COVID-19, a lot of our programs were actually canceled. So our recreation centers were closed down, the pools were closed down. And so we were trying to figure out ways to engage with our community. And so I was lucky enough to collaborate with our volunteer coordinator and our recreation team to be able to come up with a pop-up event. And so what we did is we basically came around the idea of wanting to create placemaking opportunities where we can engage with the community, build trust and relationships, and get to know our residents outside of the institutions of our infrastructures, and really get to go into those neighborhood communities or neighborhood parks that we don't necessarily have access to all the time. An example of some of the parks that we went to last year was Delaire, Mill Lake, as well as Sweeney, or I think Swenson, which was West Abbotsford, and then Blue Jay Elementary School, and then on East Abbotsford there was Claiborne Middle School and Delaire, and then Central Abbotsford was about Mill Lake. And we plan to do the same kind of cross section of locations this year as well. Really focusing on neighborhoods that don't have direct access to recreation centers is important to us. And so that's kind of where the program came from. And so in our introduction here, we just say that we seek to support local culture and encourage thoughtful dialogue by facilitating an artist residency at Parks, Recreation, and Culture's Go Play Outside pop-ups, which run from July to August. And our goal is to enhance community connectedness while providing opportunities for recreating and experiencing culture outdoors. So alongside the Artist in Residence are also activities that are being provided by our recreation team and partnerships with various stakeholders in the community. So we're trying to offer as many opportunities for people to learn and engage and recreate and experience culture. Last year, we were very lucky to be able to also partner with the Reach Gallery Museum on making little culture kits, and we hope to be doing that this year as well. So throughout the months of July and August, this is what this Artist in Residency call is for. And we're hoping the theme for this summer is similar to last summer, which is about community connections. And it really is, however you decide to define the term community and connections, that is entirely up to the artist to include in their artist proposal. And so we hope through this residency that the artist will be able to develop and showcase a new project which speaks to that theme, engage with the community, and offer cultural learning experiences through dialogue and exchange of ideas. So often that can look like you just talking to residents coming through about your specific art practice, or about arts and culture in Abbotsford, or any just kind of talking about the themes that you work with, just anything about yourself or arts and culture that you're comfortable with sharing. We do hope that through this process, we will provide you with a little bit of background information on the cultural ecology in Abbotsford, so that you're able to speak to those questions that people may have. Often I'll be on site as well, and we'll be able to assist with any more in-depth questions that residents may come up with. We hope that you communicate and share your perspectives on the artistic process with the public. So depending on what your project is, you could only be creating a portion of it technically at the pop-ups that work for you to be able to create at the pop-ups, but you might have additional processes that the public might not necessarily be able to see in that moment. And so it's important for us to be able to communicate what those processes are with people who might be interested, because it's very exciting to be able to see people engaging with the artists, such as last year, and kind of asking more questions, such as, once Luke took those photos, what are the next steps? They don't get to see that development process, and sometimes it's really insightful for them to be able to have the opportunity to learn and speak to the artist directly. We hope that you act as an advocate for understanding the realities of artists and the communities in which they work in. And finally, your work will be exhibited in the City of Abbotsford, and that location will be identified in partnership with the successful applicant and the Abbotsford Arts Council. So what's really exciting about this year is that because the Abbotsford Arts Council gallery was closed, we were going to have an exhibition of Luke's work inside the space, but then we started to discuss the overall theme of his work and whether or not that would have been enough or sufficient for what he was capturing. And so it was decided that we wanted to try to get it in as many public spaces as possible. And so we ended up having it actually in the windows of the Carrington Art Gallery, windows of the Matsqui Centennial Auditorium, as well as bus benches throughout Abbotsford, which really allowed it to be as accessible as possible throughout the whole community. And I'm really proud to see that having happened, and I've had super great feedback. And so we do hope to be able to continue those kinds of conversations with the next artists that get selected, to really kind of challenge yourself to think outside of the institutional four walls and how we can get arts into our community to those who may not feel comfortable only viewing art in that kind of format. And that is entirely up to the artist and to kind of conceptualize what that kind of looks like. We do want to say that we encourage applications from Indigenous artists, culturally diverse artists, deaf artists, and artists with disabilities, 2SL, LGBTQIA+ artists, and new generation and emerging artists. And the reason it's important for us to place that statement there is because we do want to make sure that everyone does feel comfortable with applying and know that the whatever supports that they do require, we will put those in place. If anybody has any concerns or questions, I'm more than willing to answer and work with you and however would be the best way for you to be able to, first of all, have the ability to apply for the application and then feel comfortable to work in the environment that we're going to be working in, which is in the public realm at a bunch of our parks. And so health and safety is of most importance, and I'm sure this is probably a major question that a lot of people have. So last year, it was up to 50 people were able to meet at a time, physically distanced. And so we ensured that there was cleaning of all surfaces. There was no touch points between artists and residents. And we also wore masks as well. Now, of course, things are quite different right now where people are not even able to be meeting in person at events, and it's still only within your bubble of 10. So if that were to stay this way, we are working with the Arts Council to look at some alternatives, such as working out of the outside area at the Carrington Art Gallery, so that the artists and residents have specific dates that they're there, are able to create kind of outside so people are still able to walk by and see the process happen and engage, but in a more specific place where we can control the amount of people that are going. And then also there wouldn't be any of those additional pop-up programs that we would have had normally, such as the recreation outside. Hopefully that doesn't have to happen and we get to still do the program like we did last summer. But all of those things are of top importance and will be taken into consideration moving forward. This is a tentative program timeline. So we have tentatively booked these parks, and these are the dates and times that we would like the artist to be able to attend. Sometimes there are obviously extenuating circumstances, and if you're unable to attend some of these sessions, or you know ahead of time that you're unable to attend some of the sessions, please indicate so in your application, because we actually do have some additional times that we're doing pop-ups outside of these dates, and we could potentially shift your session to a different date if necessary. Throughout the summer, if there are any dates where we get rained out, we can discuss then what that looks like. Maybe you might do something digitally, like maybe just an artist information, showing progress of your work, and we'll show something digitally, but we would just discuss that when it comes in time for the summer. And this doesn't impact the artist fees at all. If something were to happen in the summer where you're unable to attend a certain session, we will just figure out something that works mutually amongst the team. Eligibility, artists must be 19 years old, self-identify as emerging or mid-career. The reason this is important is because this program really is meant to support our emerging or mid-career artists in Abbotsford that don't necessarily have the opportunity or the experience to be able to get those larger grant applications or public art calls. We're hoping that this can really help support the cultural ecology at Abbotsford, especially with having the university have a Bachelor of Fine Arts program. So many graduates are graduating in our community, and we really wanted to be able to kind of bridge that gap between artists who are currently graduating or close to graduating, or and not being able to have the CV, a full CV, to being able to have some kind of experience that can support them on their future professional endeavors. Artists must be able to commit to the above dates as previously stated, and artists must have a relationship to Abbotsford. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to live in Abbotsford, but there has to be a relationship to Abbotsford, such as going to school, working, playing, living, previously being born, any of the above. The program must be a new project that starts in the 11 Go Play Outside pop-ups. It doesn't necessarily have to finish at the 11th pop-up, because we understand that there's processes that may need to be completed in the studio afterwards. And the program also must explore the topic of community connectedness. So ineligible projects are projects that are ongoing that you've already been working on. And then here's our selection process and assessment criteria that the panel will be using to adjudicate your works. Adherence to the application submission requirements, demonstrated artistic experience, artistic excellence, quality work, and suitability for a project of the scope, interest in experimentation and innovative ideas, ability to engage with the community about their creative practice through dialogue or demonstration, and the ability to work independently and alongside our Go Play Outside team. And so these kinds of things we'll be able to see within, obviously, your artist resume and your program submission or project submission that you'll be providing. So do make sure that you do touch on those things when you are writing your submission. The following criteria will also be used, which is the potential quality and impact the work will have on the community, the incorporation of the topic of community connections, and the feasibility of the project to be completed within the timeline and with the artist fees that are provided. So once the applications are reviewed by the adjudication panel, there will be shortlisted artists or an artist collective, and we'll schedule virtual meetings, a virtual meeting with them to kind of go over any additional questions and to find the finalist. And so that's when the final selection will be done, which will be after the shortlist interview. The artist fee is $1,500 plus an additional $500 for supply costs, and 50% of which is paid upon acceptance of your application, and then 50% upon completion. And then for application details, an artist CV, which is a maximum of 2 pages, artist biography and statement of interest, which is a maximum of 1 page outlining your interest in the program and the topics outlined, project description, which is 1 page, and we would like a brief overview of your project, including the incorporation of the theme, and then samples of work, which are a maximum of 5 images, audio files, or video files. And the file specifications are noted below. And all images must be labeled in the following format, which is indicated on this site. There seems to sometimes be an issue with people submitting their images if they're too high of megabytes. So sometimes it's easier if you just include a link to a Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox, and there is a location once you go through the application process to include that instead of uploading your images, and we'll see that coming up shortly. So the deadline is Sunday, May 9th. And so this is what this initial page. So all of this information can be found on the Artists in Residence application page on the City of Abbotsford's website. So that's abbotsford.ca/artist-residence. And so once you go through all of that, you do need to make sure that you have your application your application files ready to go, because you're unable to save your application in the middle of the process. So you would just hit next, and then we would just require your information. So I'm just going to go through this so that you can see what it looks like, so you're aware. I'm just putting in the Abbotsford stuff. I don't know what their address is. And province. There we go. And then here you can see that you can put in your website as well. So then the stars, the asterisk ones are ones that are mandatory fields. So next, and then here you'll see all of those requirements again shown here with a 64 megabyte limit, which I know for some people isn't big enough. And especially if you have any video or audio pieces, it would be best if you just use a URL for your Dropbox, Google Docs, or drives. And so here we have space for 5 images, your project description, and then the curriculum vitae and artist bio and statement of interest. So that's where all of those are. And then it won't let me go to the next page without filling these out. But the next page is just a disclaimer indicating that the work that you are submitting to us is yours and that you do have the right to be submitting those images and those ideas that you're providing us. It'll then provide you a preview of your application, and then Complete will send you an email saying that you've applied, and then I'll receive the email on the other end. If you do not hear from me within 48 hours of the application being submitted, please reach out, because there may have been something that had gone wrong. And then I want to be able to ensure that that can get rectified and that I get your application. So I'm just going to stop the screen share here. I know that was a lot of information all at once, but I do hope that it supported you guys with just kind of seeing what the application looks like. And so now I just want to open it up to any questions. So if anybody wants to just unmute themselves or type in the chat box if they have any questions. Or actually, you know what, before we get to the questions, let's have Luke Pardy just talk about his experience, because he might be able to actually answer some of the questions that you might have. So if Luke, you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, thanks.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I just want to begin by saying this was an incredible experience that I've had in the past year. It's probably kind of one of my highlights of the year. And how I approached it originally was I kind of figured out what at the time I was missing or I was wanting to do in kind of my artistic practice. What was like something, yeah, I was trying to like get at in my artistic practice. And that was like portraiture at the moment. So I kind of devised a project that met all the criterias of what the city wanted and what I also wanted personally in my artistic process. And that would be advice that I would give to all of you, is like make sure that it's really that the project you're putting forward is also beneficial to your artistic practice, short term or long term, because that's kind of what a residency is all about, is developing yourself. The other thing is like it is a unique residency that we have, and mostly because it's a lot of working outdoors, a lot of public space, and don't don't let that scare you. Don't run away from that, because there's actually a lot of opportunity in how unique that is. So I would also encourage people to kind of devise projects that really take advantage of how unique this opportunity in this residency is. Um, Also, saying to Tara-Lynn, I really appreciated how much she kind of let me make the project in the residency what I wanted it to be and how best it fit myself, but also my art practice into Abbotsford. So really work with Tara-Lynn and find ways that it can be beneficial to everybody, because I think there's a lot of flexibility that's possible in this residency. So don't model yourself basically what I did. Just go in, think, what do I need from this? How can I fit into community? How can we kind of make that happy marriage? And I think that's when the best projects will happen, is kind of finding that happy marriage.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. And I think that's one of the interesting things about it being a program specifically for emerging and mid-career artists is that I'm here to support you and to mentor you in a way that is necessary for you to be able to have a project that is meaningful for Abbotsford, but also meaningful for you. That's really, really important. I think that, like you said, Luke, that creates the best projects when it works for both. Again, I will reiterate that yes, it's outdoors, and that kind of means no power, no access to no easy access to water. So these are all things that need to be considered when applying for this artist residency. So does anybody have any questions for Luke or myself?
I had one. I was wondering, let's say that in your proposal, if you have more than one idea, are you able to propose two proposals or two concepts in one application?
I would probably suggest not to do that, just because you want to focus on the one that is the most strong. Unless they're two very diverse opposing approaches that you think are both absolutely amazing and have the same amount of weight and awesomeness to them, then go ahead. But I think in preparing for preparing yourself for other applications outside of Abbotsford, often they want just one kind of subject or one thought process provided. Luke, do you have something to add?
Weigh in on this one and say that the project I proposed, yes, is the project I ended up doing, but in that there was a lot of time between when it was made, when it was completed, and when it was shown, and between each of those three stages, kind of the meaning and the significance of it changed. So propose what you want to do, but also be very open for it being completely different at the end. Remember, it's a proposal. It's not this is what I'm doing. There's kind of two different things.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. And I think that's also really important to reiterate, because you don't know how your project is going to interact with the community, with the environment. There's so many different things that could potentially happen, or new thought processes that can happen through this project, and absolutely go into those directions while we're going through this process. I think that's really important.
I have found you can never actually predict process.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very true. Wise words. Did that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I had one other question that was, you said in the proposal, if we had any problems with the dates or anything, we could specify that. So let's say I have one problem with one date and this 1 week in August that I won't be available. So should I specify those in the, okay.
Yes, please. Absolutely. Like I said, just let me know ahead of time. That won't work against your application process. If it was half the dates, then I would say it wouldn't work. But just, yeah, if there's one or two, that's totally fine. Just please let us know, and then we can work that out afterwards. Yeah, thank you.
This kind of ties into, I think, what Luke was saying. What if you have a project that you've been thinking of for a while, but you're still trying to figure out how it would be implemented with COVID?
So those are definitely, it depends on what it is specifically. So I would think about how you could create that project in the environment that we are talking about, basically being, you're still going to have to physically distance with people. Physical distancing is going to be a requirement, I'm sure, throughout the summer. So that needs to be taken into consideration with your project. Is it in relation to interacting with other residents, or?
Well, I was thinking of doing a project based around movement. and music.
Okay.
So basically, I'll just tell you what my proposal is now, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I'm still trying to figure out things out and how it would work, but basically I would have like just raw canvas or like I don't know if it's raw or pre-prepped right now. And so I would have like my tubs of paint and then a wash basin or whatever. And you put on music and you use your feet and you just like put your feet in the paint and then just dance around. So I'm still trying to figure out what would be the best way to do that, whether I'll have like socks available for people to put on.
Right. Yeah. So I think one of the concerns would be that we don't allow touch points for multiple people. And if there are touch points, they have to be cleaned in between each person. Yeah. So that's the requirements as of right now. So there might be alternative ways for you to kind of think about that, or maybe different medium that is painted onto maybe smaller, to think about the fact that you're proposing multiple residents to participate in such a thing.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else? No? All right. Well, I do appreciate you guys attending and learning more about the program. I'm very excited to see everyone's proposals and happy to have you a part of this project and wanting to learn more.